this week we're going to look at how to potentially change negative labels into positive ones, and how in the end, by just having some intentional thinking and intentional actions, we could potentially change our whole look on children, which ultimately can potentially change their behavior. So, for example, I want you to think of that list that I asked you to make last week, where I wanted you to write down some labels and descriptors of children in your class. I had asked you to come up with one-word descriptors, which really are labels. And I want you to think of those, and we're going to think about how we can take maybe the child that really pushes those hot buttons that we had talked about before, and look at the label that you had created for them. So, for example, maybe there's a child who you have labeled as a brat, rude, bad listener. And I want you to think about, what are those behaviors that the child exhibits that gives them or makes you feel or label them that way? What is it about them? And then I want you to think about that behavior and try to come up with a positive attribute. So, for example, maybe there's that child who's a brat, he doesn't listen, he's rude, he's always interrupting you, he or she. And then I want you to think about, okay, so the behaviors that maybe really bother you is he or she is always in your face. He or she constantly needs your attention, needs one-on-one. He or she needs answers right away. He or she interrupts you all the time. So think about those behaviors and maybe what could be a positive attribute of that. So maybe that child is persistent, which being persistent can be looked at as a really positive attribute, really positive quality. So I want you to relabel. So pick one child, maybe that one that has that hottest button pushing effect on you, and really take a look at that label. What are the behaviors that caused you to give them that label? And what within those behaviors can be looked at as a positive attribute? Now I want you to relabel that child in that positive word. So maybe that child who you labeled as a brat, rude, or not a good listener, now you're going to label that child as persistent. And for the next few weeks, I want you to talk and look at that child through the lens of that new label. Consciously make intentional choices and intentional ways that you're speaking to this child with that new label. And really have a whole different approach with this child and their behaviors. Really changing your actions, your feelings, your responses towards him or her. And I think that you'll find, it may not be a dramatic change, but I think you'll really find that changing our feelings and our label and making that conscious, intentional ways of talking and reacting to the child really can change the behavior. So, for example, that child who was, constantly in your face, wanted one-on-one, interrupting, wanting answers right away, you now labeled as persistent. Maybe you had them being a helper in the classroom. Maybe they were the table setter. And just really giving them different jobs and having different responses and feelings and attitudes towards that child. And in the end, you may find that that child becomes one of the best helpers in the classroom. And their behavior may change and may have more of a positive behavior. Because in the end, children are going to pick up on our responses and our attitudes and our feelings towards them. And they're going to react to that. So for the next few weeks, I want you to be intentional. I want you to be thoughtful about this new label that you have in a child. And then you're going to be reflecting on it. This isn't going to be due for a few weeks. I think it's June 26th. So you're going to do this for a couple weeks, and then you're going to have a reflection on it, which is under, all the information in writing is under this video on Blackboard, along with the rubric. So truly think about changes and attitude changes that you can have with this child. And hopefully we'll see some changes in not just how you feel, but the child's actions as well, and the other children's responses and attitudes towards that child in the classroom. Because I think you'll find that other children start to pick up the tone of voice that you maybe have, the words that you use with the other children, and that label really stands out to everybody. So let's think about how we can make a negative label and turn it into a positive. Good luck.